All right, NFL fans, welcome back to another episode of the NFL Whip Round. I'm one of the hosts, Jeff Hartman, joined by Coach KT Smith as we dive into another exciting week of NFL football. Coach, what's going on?
What's up, Jeff? It was an exciting week. And I think you and I and pretty much everybody out of the greater Kansas City area is rejoicing on this day because, we don't have to talk about that streak.
Yes. Yes. I mean, your prediction still holds true for the Kansas City Chiefs. You said 16-1 2 weeks ago. And so they've only lost one. So that still is true. Do you still feel the same way?
I am a little more encouraged as a Steelers fan in Pittsburgh's chance to beat them in Pittsburgh on Christmas Day than I was prior to Sunday. But I still look at Kansas City's schedule, and I think they're the favorite in every game.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that 100%. But let's not put the cart before the horse, because that's what we're going to talk about in the first topic. In case it's your first time listening to the show, we have 5 topics and a player profile every single week here on the NFL Whip Round. We don't stop this show. We do it all through the offseason. So first topic. Sunday was an eventful one in the AFC. Buffalo beats Kansas City in Buffalo. Pittsburgh beats Baltimore in Pittsburgh. And now the top of the conference is suddenly cluttered. The Chiefs, Bills, Steelers, all separated by one game. Who, in your opinion, is the team to beat in the AFC right now? Coach, I'll let you go first.
Well, I've been saying that Kansas City's the team to beat until somebody beats them.
Yeah.
And now Buffalo has beaten them. But Buffalo beating Kansas City in the regular season is not new. Buffalo's now won the last 4 regular season matchups between those two teams. But of course, Kansas City's won the 3 playoff matchups between those two teams. So if it's Buffalo and Kansas City, then I still have to favor the Chiefs come playoff time. They still have the pole position, to use a Mike Tomlin phrase, to get to the number 1 seed in that all-important bye and host that game in their own backyard. So I still think it's Kansas City. But I'll say this briefly. Everybody is still qualifying the Pittsburgh Steelers. I still see all the writers on Monday, ranking the Steelers in the AFC hierarchy as 3rd or 4th. And I still see people saying, they really got to prove it when they're up against great competition. I mean, Pittsburgh's won in Washington and at home against Baltimore the last 2 weeks. Those are back-to-back 2 wins as good as any pair of wins that I think anybody in the league has right now. And I'm not 100% sold on the Steelers yet, but I'm getting there, man. I'm starting to think that the Steelers are a legitimate contender.
I think the one thing that separates the Steelers from the other 2 teams that we're talking about, in my opinion, I'll get your take on this, is their defense. The Steelers' defense is right there with the Chiefs, in my opinion. The Chiefs' defense is really good. They got 30 hung on them by the Buffalo Bills on the road. And that's something that is, we're not used to seeing. I think I heard during the game that the last time that the Chiefs gave up 30 was Christmas Day last year, maybe something like that, against the Raiders when they lost that weird fluky game on Christmas Day. Really, really strange. Buffalo, you've seen the good and the bad from them this season. I think they've found a level of consistency. I don't know if they've played a really difficult schedule up till this point. The Steelers are winning big games, though, too. And I agree with you. Everyone's trying to find a reason not to believe in the Steelers. And that includes some Steeler fans, by the way. They just aren't ready to buy in. First question, Coach, why do you think people are hesitating on giving the Steelers some credit and the due that a lot of people feel like they deserve?
I think there's a couple of reasons. One, they tend to win ugly, so to speak. Yeah. They win these games where the score's not pretty. It's a slugfest. This is the second game that they've won this season without scoring an offensive touchdown or a touchdown at all.
Correct.
And you don't really win games like that. The offense doesn't wow you. The style. Mike Tomlin's famous for his quote, "Style points don't matter." And the Steelers are the personification of that. They don't win games stylistically. And I think that in the eyes of a lot of people who casually watch the sport, watching Josh Allen do what he does, or even Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, or Mahomes, or Lamar Jackson, that glamour quarterback who makes the splash play on a routine basis feels like the way that you get to the Super Bowl. And the pattern that the Steelers are authoring or usually author feels a bit antiquated. You win with defense and the run game. And I think that people are hesitant to buy in because their formula doesn't seem to fit football in 2024.
So let's go back to it. And I want to ask a question that you said the team to beat right now. Who do you think will be the team to beat by the season's end?
I think Kansas City, like I said in the beginning, they still have the inside track. Now they can't slip up, and going to Pittsburgh on Christmas Day will be daunting. Buffalo's schedule's okay. I mean, they have a couple challenging games in there, but there's some soft landing spots for them in the AFC East. I think Buffalo probably has a fairly easy path. Pittsburgh's road is daunting.
Yeah.
I mean, they still have to play Baltimore again. They still have to play Cincinnati twice, which is not going to, even though Cincinnati is 4-7, they're a tough out. They got to play Philly. They got to play Kansas City. Steelers have a tough road. You can't write the Ravens off yet either. So, I mean, I don't know. I think all things being equal, I still think Kansas City is that team. If they get the home field advantage, they're going to be a tough out.
Sadly, I agree with you. Although the Chargers winning in the way that they did against the Bengals on Sunday Night Football makes the division games with the Chiefs. I think they have one left against Kansas City. That's not a gimme anymore. A lot of people thought it might be. So we'll keep that in mind. But let's go to the next side of the other side of the docket. Our second topic, the NFC. It's similarly tight with the Detroit Lions, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Minnesota Vikings all within a game of each other. Detroit just blew the doors off of the Jaguars, 52-6. However, they won 8 in a row by an average margin of 19 points per game. Is Detroit on another level from the rest of the NFC? What's your take?
On the surface, it feels that way because, again, you win 8 in a row by an average margin of victory of almost 20 points per game. That's absurd in the NFL. That's like Georgia rampaging through the soft part of the SEC. But within that, there's a little bit of I don't want to call it a mirage, but when you look a little bit closer, I think you see that there's that 20-point cushion is inflated by some blowouts. They beat Dallas 47-9. They beat Tennessee 52-14. They blow out Jacksonville 52-6. They can blow the doors off of bad teams. Those are 3 bad teams they've absolutely annihilated. But look at the games that they played in that stretch against good teams. They beat Arizona 20-13 in a tight game. They beat Minnesota 31-29 on a field goal in the last play of the game. They beat Houston 26-23 on a field goal on the last play of the game. I think against the best teams, that Detroit can be beaten. I think that they're the best teams have been giving them a run for their money. And we mentioned Arizona, Houston, and Minnesota. Those are all good teams, but they're not elite teams. We really haven't seen Detroit against an elite team all season. I wouldn't say that they've played an elite team yet. And they're not going to until week 15 when they play Buffalo. They've got Buffalo, and then in week 17 and 18, they got San Francisco, who's not elite right now, and Minnesota. So it'll be interesting to see where they are. Philadelphia is the team, I think, that is really coming on and is doing it against good competition. We're seeing the Eagles play well against some pretty good teams. So that'll be fascinating to me to see as we get down the road. Can Detroit play their dominant fashion of football against the better teams in the NFC?
I'm going to say it again. I think Detroit is in a class on their own. I think it takes a Jared Goff turning the ball over like he had 5 interceptions 2 weeks ago to maybe open the door for some of these teams. The Eagles are the team that I would say if there's a team that can beat them, it's Philly. They have a defense that can maybe slow down that Detroit offense. But there are some inconsistencies with that offense that just have me shaking my head. I watched that Thursday night game, and I know it's Thursday night, and that's tough, and that's short rest. Jalen Hurts looks off. He looks like he did that. What the passing game in and of itself in the first half was abysmal. They are riding Saquon Barkley until the wheels fall off. And sadly, and I don't know if they realize this, he has a history of those wheels falling off in terms of injury. But do you agree that Philadelphia is the number 1 contender to Detroit if they are the cream of the crop?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about that. Because you look at the rest of the conference, Green Bay and Minnesota could challenge Detroit because they're division rivals. But I don't think anybody's in on Sam Darnold in the playoffs. Jordan Love has been up and down all year long. There's nobody in the NFC South. That division looks extremely weak. And the NFC West right now, everybody's 5-5 except for the 6-4 Cardinals. So who is that other than the Eagles? Is it the Commanders? We'll see. I mean, they've lost 2 in a row. And Jordan Daniels or Jaden Daniels has not looked as dominant as he did early in the year. I think that rookie wall is a real thing, especially for quarterbacks, because you're now getting to the point, here we are heading into week 12 with the preseason. This is the time of year where, as a college quarterback, you're about to get a nice long break between your last game or your championship game and your bowl game. And in the NFL, you're going to hit the grind. So I just don't see another challenger outside of Philly.
Do you think the 49ers are a team that can rise up, and let's assume that they win the NFC West, and maybe it's not, maybe 10 wins does it. A 10-7 team wins the NFC West. Do you think that that's a team, if you were to handpick one that's not in the crop that we've already talked about, that could go into Detroit and potentially beat them?
I think they could, but I don't think that they're anywhere near in position to be able to do it. They're 5-5. Look at what they've got coming up on their schedule. They're at Green Bay this week. That's a tough game going into Lambeau. Then they're at Buffalo the following week. I mean, they got a game left with the Rams. They have to go to Detroit, as you said, and they end the season at Arizona. That's a hard schedule, man. They don't have any. They got a trip to Miami in there too. The only layup might be Chicago at home in week 14. I could see San Francisco. They're 5-5 right now. I could see them winding up 8-9. 9-8, maybe at the, maybe, but man, again, Buffalo, the Rams, Miami, Detroit, Arizona, Green Bay. That's a tough slate. And they're not playing well at all. Now they're talented enough to catch fire at any time, but they're beat up. They've got veterans injured. They haven't been able to put things together. This is the first time I think that I feel as though San Francisco's not a threat in the NFC.
That's crazy. And, they have a lot of looming decisions, mainly with Brock Purdy at quarterback in terms of the contract that he's expected to receive. It's going to be a talking point for sure down the stretch, but we won't go there just yet. We'll see how it plays out. Let's go to our third topic. That is the Denver quarterback, Bo Nix. He went 28 or 33 for 307 yards and 4 touchdowns on Sunday as the Broncos routed the Atlanta Falcons 38-6. Nix has thrown 13 touchdowns against just 2 interceptions in the past 7 games, and the Broncos are 5-2 in that span. All the hype for Rookie of the Year is centered on Jaden Daniels, but is Nix entering the conversation? This is interesting because you bring up the last 7 games. I think it's a full body of work, though. What do you think? Is Jaden Daniels still the front runner, or is Bo Nix closing the gap?
I think the answer to both those questions is yes. I think Jaden Daniels is absolutely still the front runner, but Bo Nix is playing some good football. And you and I on this show early in the season, and I think even before the season, we thought Sean Payton was kind of blowing some smoke when he gushed about Bo Nix. And we both seemed to think like, come on, man, you got shut out of the quarterback lottery for the best guys, and then you reached for a second-round guy, and now you're doing your due diligence by talking him up and trying to convince everybody you got your guy. But it sure kind of looks like they got their guy, man. Bo Nix is playing some really good football. And when you look at Denver, they're 6-5 right now. If the playoffs started today, they would be the last team in the AFC as the 7. And now they've got coming up at Vegas. That team's a train wreck. Against Cleveland, that team's a mess. At home against Indianapolis, that's certainly a winnable game. I mean, their next 3 are very winnable games. They got a tough close. They closed with the Chargers, the Bengals, and Kansas City. But they got an opportunity to put up 9 or 10 wins, and that could potentially get them into the playoffs as the last seed in the AFC. So I think that's surprising, and I think that what Sean Payton's doing really well, and I got to see a little bit of that Denver game on Sunday, is the ball is out of Bo Nix's hands quickly, and they're giving him a lot of stuff where he's got same side progression reads, which means like, my eyes are on the right side of the field and we're structuring our route combinations so I don't have to move to the other side of the field to get through my progression. So it's kind of levels routes. It's easy stuff to read. And it's the kind of stuff I think that Bo Nix does well and that Russell Wilson doesn't really do well. And you see what Sean Payton's doing with Bo Nix, and you kind of understand why he and Sean Payton butted heads, because stylistically, it's two totally different types of passing games.
I think that when you're talking about Rookie of the Year, it's Jaden Daniels' award to lose. He has not played exceptionally well the last 2 weeks. He has played two really good defenses in Pittsburgh and in Philadelphia, respectively. And he's also not healthy. I'm sorry, like people will say, like, oh yeah, he's a little banged up. The dude's still getting like this hot treatment on his ribs during the game. You could tell that he's bothered by it. He's also not running it. But Bo Nix is closing that gap. I want to see Bo Nix do it for a little bit longer. I still can't get over how poorly he played in Baltimore just a couple weeks ago. I don't know. When I'm thinking Rookie of the Year, I'm not thinking Bo Nix, even though these numbers are impressive. But that can change, you know? I mean, he had the Denver Broncos a field goal away from beating the Kansas City Chiefs, and the field goal gets blocked. Yeah. So you got to weigh all that together. This is going to be maybe a race to the finish, but I think we both agree that it's Jaden Daniels' award to lose. We'll see how that plays out. But Denver, they're a team that's tough to figure out. They're a team that is really difficult to figure out because, again, they're beating up on bad teams. They swept the NFC South, which is by far the worst division in football, again. And, you know, they have tough games ahead. They have difficult games ahead. So we'll see. If you were to predict, though, sitting here right now, who wins that award?
Jaden Daniels. I just think his body of work is excellent. Jaden Daniels hasn't played well the last couple of weeks. He's still completing almost 70% of his passes. He's got 10 touchdowns against just 3 interceptions. He's playing good football. And I think that the mini bye where they played the Thursday nighter and now they get a couple extra days off, that's going to help him a lot.
I agree. 100%. Let's go to our next topic. The Chargers on Sunday Night Football beat the Cincinnati Bengals and are quietly 7-3. Their defense has given up the fewest points in the league. They have an elite quarterback in Justin Herbert, who's finally healthy, a solid rushing attack with Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, and Jim Harbaugh knows how to win. Could LA be a dark horse in the AFC? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, they're an intriguing team, but I'm going to answer no to that question. And it's probably unfair of me to answer no because I'm essentially using the past as precedent. When's the last time we've ever really been able to believe in the Chargers? It's been a long time. They always feel like a talented team that falls short. Now, granted, that was with previous coaching regimes, and Jim Harbaugh knows how to win. He's been to a Super Bowl. He's won a national championship as a college coach. He's structuring an offense in LA where everything doesn't have to go through Justin Herbert, and they're leaning on a really good defense. Sunday night's game against Cincinnati, however, revealed the best and the worst of that Chargers team. A Chargers team that can be electric, that can look dominant, and then a Chargers team that can just absolutely fall apart like it did in that historic playoff loss to Jacksonville a couple years ago. So I have a hard time believing in the Chargers until they play more consistent football.
I mean, it was the tale of two halves. At halftime, it's 24-6. I go to bed. I'm thinking, this is over. This game is over. And I wake up and it was 34-27 and J.K. Dobbins had to score a touchdown in the waning seconds of the game to win it for the Chargers as well. That's chargering. I guess you can change the coach and they still can charger it up, but they find a way to win. But let's look at what they have coming up. So on the 25th, Monday Night Football, it's the Harbaugh Bowl. The Baltimore Ravens go across country to play the Chargers. Then they go to the Falcons. Then the Chargers go to the Chiefs. Then they host the Buccaneers. They host the Broncos. They go to the Patriots, and they finish with the Raiders. Let's assume if there's 3 losses in there, that's an 11-6 team. They're making the playoffs. I would think it takes a monumental collapse for them not to be in the postseason. You agree?
Yeah, but they're making the playoffs as the 6th seed, most likely. They're behind the 4 division leaders. They're probably going to finish behind the Ravens. We don't know that for sure, but there's a decent chance they finish behind the Ravens. If you're the 6th seed, now you got to go on the road to the 3 seed, which is going to be Kansas City, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, or Baltimore, one of those teams. Anybody but the AFC South. And that's a tough ask in the first round. I'm not saying they can't beat any of those teams, but those are all predominantly cold weather teams. You're going to have to play physical football. Now, maybe they're built for that under Harbaugh, but they just haven't been that team. But, this question asked about a dark horse. I'll tell you who I would not consider dead just yet. I don't know if the Bengals are dead just yet. I know they're 4-7. I know they're 4-7. But when you watch the Bengals, I don't know how much of that game you watched on Sunday night. They're just still scary to me, man. When they're clicking, when they got it going, they're one of the scariest teams in the NFL. And granted, they got to play the Steelers twice. And let's just assume that they lose one of those games. Let's assume that's a split. And now you got 8 losses. There's no way you're making it into the playoffs unless you win at least 9 games. It's probably going to take 10 to get it done. But let's say Denver goes 9-8, Cincinnati goes 9-8. Cincinnati, other than those 2 games against Pittsburgh, they've got Dallas, Tennessee, Cleveland, all very winnable, and then Denver. Let's say Cincinnati splits with Pittsburgh and runs the table. They finish 9-8. Denver finishes 9-8. They get the tiebreaker for beating Denver. I just don't think they're dead just yet.
Gosh, I feel like if they're not dead, that nail is getting ready to be driven into the coffin. It's only they're going on a bye. They're off this week. They come off their bye and they host the Steelers on the 1st of December. But you talk about the head-to-head, like that loss to the Chargers hurts the Bengals' chances because if the Chargers slip up and they're tied, they lost that head-to-head. And if you have the Broncos coming in week 17, you have to win that game if you have a chance. And you look at Pittsburgh, if they were to slip up, well, guess what? They beat the Chargers earlier this year. They already beat the Broncos earlier this year. They have those head-to-head victories. Some of these games mean more. But to go back to the Chargers for a second, because the Bengals are 1 loss away, in my opinion, of them being done. Like they're done. There's no chance. But to go back to the Chargers, are they not built to make a playoff push and to be a really difficult out? A really good defense. Some might say they haven't been truly tested, but a good defense. They have a good offensive line that protects Herbert. He's healthy. He looks like he's dynamic. Good running game. That seems to be a recipe for success, is it not? I would say that they could be a dark horse candidate to make some noise in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've, they've got the experienced coach who knows how to win in the postseason. It's all right there for the Chargers. I just have a hard time buying in until they actually get it done. Because again, they have not been a legitimate playoff team in a long time.
I get it. Absolutely. Let's go to our 5th and final topic here in off-field news. It was reported over the weekend that Bill Belichick wants to return to the NFL as a head coach in 2025. Where do you think the most likely landing spot is for Belichick if he comes back next year?
I'm not a source guy. Like you've got some legitimate sources. With the Steelers, I do know a few guys who are in the inner ranks of coaching circles in the NFL, and
okay,
the destination that pops up all the time is Dallas, and I hear there's a 100% no way he's going to Dallas.
I agree.
That's it. I mean, that's just what I hear from some people who know a few things about how things are going down in the NFL. I don't know. I think there's some intriguing potential destinations for Belichick. You look at some of the bad teams. I think Antonio Pierce will get another year in Vegas. I don't think they're ready to fire him. But the New York teams are intriguing. I mean, Belichick is a New York guy.
Oh my gosh, could he go back to the Jets? Are you saying he goes back to the Jets? There's no way.
Or the Giants. I don't, does Brian Daboll survive? He won a couple Super Bowls as an assistant with Bill Parcells and the Giants. He was the head coach of the Jets for a hot minute, like literally a hot minute. And then he wasn't. He's a North Jersey guy. He lives in that part. He's been living up in that region for a while. He's got lots of connections up there. It just wouldn't shock me if he wound up with one of the New York teams.
So let's look at teams that we could argue are going to be replacing their coach and looking for a coach next year. I'm going to say the Jaguars is one. Would you agree?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. I think that the Browns, I don't know. Is Stefanski potentially? There's a lot of Browns fans that think he could be gone, but you don't think, do you?
I don't know. I don't know to what degree is his relationship with ownership protecting him from that. The guy was the 2-time coach of the year, was the coach of the year in the NFL last year, and the Browns have set him up for failure.
Yeah.
Now, does that absolve him of the way that this season has gone? Well, not totally, but if you're going to fire a guy because you put him in a terrible predicament, then that's going to just precipitate the continual culture of losing. I think
Right.
Cleveland's smart. They hold on to Stefanski and they give him a roster that he can win with, because he's shown when you give him just something that's adequate, he can be successful. So I don't know.
Right.
I'm not sure about Cleveland.
Well, on top of that, the team that the Cleveland Browns lost to on Sunday, the Saints, they're going to need a head coach, and that's a team that, would that be intriguing? I don't know. You brought up the Jets, the Titans. I don't think that the Titans are going to be looking. Do you agree?
No, yeah, I think they're giving Callahan more than one season there. They haven't been an absolute train wreck. They've been in some close games.
Okay.
The Giants are intriguing, man, because
Yeah,
all right, they just benched Daniel Jones. They just announced that he's going to the Pines.
that's right.
Tommy DeVito, the pride of North Jersey. There's dad may or may not have been a hitman. I don't know. That's not true. But I mean, he looks like he's out of central casting from The Sopranos. But
Yes.
he's going to now take over. Obviously, he's not the guy going forward. The Giants are going to be all in on trying to get a quarterback at the top of the draft. That might be attractive to Bill Belichick. He might be willing to say, "Hey, man, I can start over in a team that's got an okay roster, but I get to choose my own quarterback."
Okay, so there's two teams here that I'm going to bring up that have solidified quarterbacks. Whether they're proven is neither here nor there. The first one is the Chicago Bears. Would Chicago fire? I think we think Eberflus is going to be gone at the end of the season unless something crazy happens. They just lose a heartbreaker to Green Bay and in a blocked field goal. So what do you think about Belichick and Caleb Williams with that
God.
Bears roster?
That feels like two creatures from completely different times and places. Belichick and Caleb Williams. I don't know. Would Bill Belichick be okay if his quarterback has painted fingernails? I don't know if he's evolved that much.
You want to know the ultimate dark horse team? Let me throw this out there. Is what if Zach Taylor gets fired in Cincinnati?
Yeah.
And Joe Burrow and that offense, and you say, Belichick, we got the quarterback already. We've got Jamar Chase. They're probably going to have to sign him to some huge deal. What do you think about that?
I think this is the intriguing question. A lot of the stories you heard about Bill Belichick is that he hasn't lost a step as far as his X and O's are concerned. But when it comes to relating to the players and interacting with the players, that's really where he slipped. Okay. And I think the question would come down to, does an ownership group feel as though Belichick can connect with these young players again? And so that might be the issue right there. I mean, would Belichick and Joe Burrow, Belichick and Jamar Chase, would that be a good match? Because he's got to be able to mesh with the superstars wherever he goes. And I don't know the answer to that question. I think that's going to depend on how willing an ownership group is to take a shot on him.
Do you think the TV work that he's done this year has helped or hurt his case to be a coach next year?
100% helped. Because he looks like a human being, I mean, everybody I think had this perception that he was just this cold, robotic taskmaster. And then you find out, like, he's funny and he tells good stories. And when he loosens up, but TV Bill Belichick also seems to be very different from head coach Bill Belichick. When you listen to players tell stories about him, he does seem to be a very different person as a head coach.
All right, so I'm not going to ask you for a prediction just yet. We'll hold off on that until close to the offseason.
Yeah.
But if you had to predict right now, as we sit here and record this, does Bill Belichick find a job in 2025?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think he does.
So you think he's back in the league next year?
Yeah, I wouldn't lay any money on it, but yes.
I could see it being a no. I could see it just being people saying, you know what? We don't necessarily need that. There's a lot of young coaches, potential coaches out there. They'd rather go that route than the guy who's just trying to hang on long enough to beat Don Shula. So we'll see. All right, let's go to our player profile. You want to talk about Taysom Hill, who had himself a hell of a game against the Browns down in New Orleans. Why don't you go ahead and talk about it?
Yeah, Taysom Hill, man. He's an interesting story to me. I mean, here's a guy who comes out of college. He was a pretty good quarterback at BYU, but he was an like a college style Tebow-esque type quarterback. You know, run power and throw some simple little passes. And the Saints drafted him back in 2018. And he's been in New Orleans. It's interesting, man. He's been there now. I think this is his 8th year in New Orleans. He's survived through multiple regime changes there, multiple head coaches. He's cobbling together a kind of a fascinating NFL career as a hybrid quarterback / tight end. He's actually listed on their roster as a tight end. But I would be interested to know this. I'm going to read you some stats real quick, right? Here are Taysom Hill's career stats. He's got 94 career receptions. He's got 442 career rushes. And he's got 193 career completions as a quarterback. Has anybody in the history of the league, let's round up, all right? Has anybody in the history of the league had 100 receptions, 500 rushes, and 200 completions? I would bet no. I would bet nobody. Maybe Cordell Stewart. I don't know what Cordell Stewart's career numbers are as his slash.
He wasn't a receiver long enough to have what was the number of receptions?
Taysom Hill's got 94 career catches, so he's closing in on 100 career catches. He's got 18 this year, which suggests that he's going to get 6 more over the course of this season.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, he's quietly putting together a kind of a fascinating NFL career. I'm not suggesting he's going to go to the Hall of Fame or anything like that, but I'm just saying, like, he's been as a player in New Orleans a really valuable piece. He also has 1 career punt, by the way.
Nice. So Cordell Stewart in his career as a receiver, all for Pittsburgh, had 41 receptions. That's
okay.
It.
So he's
that's because he was only used as a receiver in his first 2 years after being drafted out of Colorado. And then he was switched to more of a quarterback role. So you'd have to probably go way back in the NFL archives to find a guy who did it all for his team in one way or another. That's probably
100 catches, 500 rushes, 200 completions. I need to find the answer to that.
That sounds like a call sheet episode. Speaking of which, what is coming up on the call sheet, Coach?
This is gonna be good, man. We're gonna do an elimination episode, right? Oh. What teams in the NFL have been eliminated, both realistically and literally, from the NFL playoff picture? And we're gonna do a post-mortem for those teams. We're going to read the obituary of the 2024 teams that have been eliminated from playoff contention, and essentially why. Where did it go wrong? Why didn't they get it done this year?
So there are teams that are already mathematically eliminated.
I mean, I have to.
Is this just you drawing the inevitable?
This is me saying there's no way in hell the Jacksonville Jaguars are making the playoffs.
Hey, fair enough. I look forward to that episode for sure. So check out Coach's call sheet right here on the FFS and NFL feed. Make sure you check out all of our content and check out our website, fansfirstsports.com. But Coach, that does it for another whip round. We'll talk next week, man. Take it easy.